Good afternoon, everyone. This is Dr. Gershon. I'm here with another Better Health webinar. I am absolutely thrilled to be here with a good friend and colleague, Alan May. And we're going to talk to you about AI in healthcare and the strategies for investors, particularly as it focuses in on early stage investment. There's a tremendous growth story that is secular in nature about healthcare investing, particularly in the digital health space. And Alan and I are both active investors. And I think that part of our mission is to bring some information to members and organizations that we work with, like the Angel Capital Association, to let investors know that there is a new business model, a new set of parameters, a new set of OKRs and KPIs that we can look at and make some assessments about valuation, about risk, about entry, and about exit points that are quite exciting and represent, in our opinion, a long-term trend that has tremendous opportunities for early stage investors. So at this point, first, I want to thank everyone for their incredible support over the many months of the webinars. We've received incredible emails and texts and people who have brought us incredible interactive questioning for our featured speakers. There's been a very significant number of companies that have received investor interest. There has been a tremendous number of large corporations who've engaged in many of the smaller companies who have participated. There is, in fact, an ecosystem that's being built around the Better Health webinar series. And Alan, who represents also Life Science Angels, um, the Angel Capital Association itself, forms an ever-increasing pool of interested parties, not only as investors, but also as part of a social fabric that looks at healthcare in light of the pandemic over the past several years and recognizes that there's tremendous intersections between science, medicine, healthcare, and that we as investors can help push this effort forward. So I want to thank everyone. I particularly want to encourage people to dial in. We have already people like Nikhil from Alberta, Canada, calling in. We've got Martin from Norway. We've got Malik from New York, my home state. We've got Ariane. We've got Jenny. We've got a tremendous number of people already signing in from all parts of the world. And I want to encourage you to continue to let us know where you're signing in from, and please be interactive throughout the day. And whatever questions we don't get to today, we certainly will get back to you within the week. So let me introduce you to Alan. Let him, in fact, introduce himself, which is even better. And tell, I think, the audience, the listeners, the viewers, a little bit about his incredible career. He's been involved really with some absolutely fantastic organizations, um, corporations, law firms. He really is, first, a fine human being, and second of all, a very seasoned investor. So I think we're here today to frame something that is important because it represents a trend. And this trend, you know, probably will last 10 or 20 years. So with that, Alan, why don't you tell us a bit about yourself? I think you're on mute at the moment. There you go. And then a little bit about ACA and the involvement that you've had with ACA for so many years, and the meaningful impact that that has on early stage investors.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Martin, and thanks for having me again, and thanks for being my friend. This has we just met this year, and what a fortunate event that was, and we're building on that, I think, in important ways, as you said, for our ecosystem in the industry. So I guess the part of my career that I want to talk about and is kind of interesting is angels and angel groups and the growth of them. Where did that all come from? There was a VC industry in the 50s, 60s, 70s. They nailed it. They created the idea of it, and they created best practices. They got together. They figured out how to syndicate amongst one another. They figured out who was good for what and where the best areas of cooperation and partnership was, and all that worked great. The trouble was that as entrepreneurs were coming up big time in the 80s and 90s in tech, they were too small for VCs to deal with. And the only angels as such, angel groups that existed were essentially in the West Coast and East Coast, New York, Boston, San Francisco, the Bay Area, et cetera. So sure, the big states with big organizations had angels and angel groups, but hey, what about the rest of the country and everybody else? So Kauffman Foundation, very well, they've done more for entrepreneurship than certainly any organization that I'm aware of. And they saw this problem. And so they organized Angel Capital Association. And the idea of Angel Capital Association was to create angel networks and angel groups inside of the entire country, spread them throughout the United States, and begin to link them, create best practices, create relationships among and between the groups. And they set out to do that. And when you think about it, it's like, gee, what's hard about putting together an angel group? Well, if it's 20 years ago and you're in Texas or Minnesota or a whole lot of other states, it's really pretty hard. And how do you do it, and how do you organize the echo? It's an ecosystem thing, right? It's not just organizing an angel group, it's putting together the group of entrepreneurs, lawyers, accounting firms, executives from organizations, life science and pharma organizations who are now up in the field and maybe have a little money and want to encourage entrepreneurship. It's creating that entire ecosystem to nurture entrepreneurship and drive it forward in the US. And it's been just phenomenally successful. And so Angel Capital Association was the initial network to set that up. I was fortunate to be on the board of that for quite a number of years, and also led the Angel Capital Education Foundation, which was the data teaching side of that. And the whole idea, believe it or not, and still true today, there's no data on angel investing. I mean, astonishing, a $25 billion industry that has no data. What else? There's more data on gas stations than there are on angel groups and angel investing. So it's really kind of amazing. So Angel Capital Association has grown. Angel groups have grown. Angels have grown. 20 years ago, angels couldn't find one another. They weren't linked. There wasn't an internet for everybody to Google everybody and figure out where everybody was. And honestly, just getting angels to meet and know one another was a challenge. So, okay, now all you have to do is go online to find angels. But the reason that exists is because of things like Angel Capital Association. And once a year, they have a summit. And the summit used to be just for group leaders, just for people who ran angel groups and organized that activity to meet together and share amongst themselves. And then this decade, they opened it up to individual angels as well. So that meeting is this year. It's in May. It's in Las Vegas, of all places. We won't comment on what that means for angel investing. But there's going to be a focus there on life science. And I think what you had in mind here and what we wanted to talk about a little bit is things are changing so quickly, and particularly with the tsunami of AI and Gen AI and all the things that are coming together now to change how people think about medical devices and the creation of drugs and devices, and more importantly, data and analytics to drive investing. This is this is where things are going, and we need to help educate angels again, and talk to them about what's going on, get their opinions, and link together those areas as we did before.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much to unpack there, but it's also true. I think that the opportunities are win, win, win. First and foremost for patients. We've recognized, certainly everyone in the world, that health is fragile. But now, with this, we've also recognized that when there is intention and a cooperative effort between government and industry and the private sector, we can move mountains. And we developed incredible vaccines, which you will be talking about in part at the summit, which I'm proud to be a part of as well. And I think that this sets the stage for what I see as an academic. I am involved in a number of institutions at Harvard and MIT and NYU and Columbia and McGill, Oxford, a number of places that represent great thought leaders who are coming together with industry. And this collaborative effort really, I think, for me as an investor in the Endeavor funds, is paramount to bring that message to angel investors and to early stage investors, even in the VC world. Because this is part of the paradigm shift. It's not a zero sum game, it's not a winner take all. There's so much opportunity within the AI system because it's a platform technology that allows and promotes and thrives on bringing together different use cases in and across different industries. So I think, one of the things that I want to talk about is, in general, AI is changing the world. And I think we're all in agreement that this has both sides of the sword. It's a double edged sword. There are a very significant number of voices who believe that AI is a dangerous tool. They could say the same thing about the internet. And so I look very much at AI as a decade-long investment curve, very similar to the dot-com era of the 1990s. In this dot-com era, there were cycles, and I want us to talk about some of these cycles. As we all remember, in the 1990s, it was about eyeballs. You didn't have to generate revenue. You had to capture eyeballs. There were companies that literally within a year were unicorns. Literally were doubling in valuation every week. These cycles are repetitive throughout investment history, as you and I know. And while the end game was a complete destruction of 90+% of these dot-com companies, during the 10-year period, there was incorporation of many of these companies into large, prominent organizations like Google and Microsoft and others. And those things helped shape the internet and the digital world that we see now. And so this is just a natural process of excitement, growth, hypergrowth, hypervaluation, explosion into exuberant extremes, M&A, and then bust. But we're in the early stages of this cycle. And so part of the question I know that angel investors have is, how do you decide between this company and that company? How do you make a rational decision based upon the metrics that are embedded in healthcare, which is clinical trials and data drives everything on a relative valuation basis? So I want to open this up, to discussion with you because I know you have strong opinions. I also, want to really make the statement that there are new business models that are intersecting with science and innovation, and most importantly, big tech, and that this will be the dominant force really for decades. So I know that you and I have had amazing dynamic conversations. I want to open the floor for questions really that you've been thinking about because you're a thoughtful investor.
Yeah, big idea. This is a really big idea. It's interesting. Two things I think that are kind of fundamental about it. So for decades, I think the view was there's tech and there's med tech, and this is a little bit like Christians and Jews. They just approach life in different ways, right? And they didn't speak one another's languages. And interestingly, that began to change when the whole big data infotech was first, and then came machine learning and big data, and now AI. And although tech and med tech couldn't get along, the one place where they overlapped was the need for information, and in particularly actionable information. And so originally, tech and med tech couldn't talk because data isn't useful clinically. A doctor can't do anything with data. A doctor needs actionable information. And now with AI and with the new ability, the new analytics and software that's becoming dominant in healthcare, now we can do that. Physicians are inundated. If you really pick any of the sectors, yourself as a physician and as an educator, you can't pick a field, oncology, neurology, cardiology, whatever you like, and keep up with the literature. There are so many discoveries and so much going on at every level, molecular, mechanical, electrical, all of it is just exploding. And so what physicians need now is to make sense of that, to treat your daughter and to treat your parents. And so that's the really cool part that's coming just now. And unfortunately, the thing that hasn't developed yet as quickly as the tech are the business models to take advantage of that tech. And so where we need innovation is now not just in the AI and the data analytics. What we need now is innovation in business models to bring those wonders back into the healthcare system and make a difference in our lives.
I just couldn't agree more. And this is exciting because it really is, people like yourself who've been through various cycles in investing and the ability to adapt, pivot, and grow is really embedded in the Endeavor funds. And we run a venture studio, as you know, to train CEOs to be great leaders, to be great team builders. And this conversation really, spans generations. It's about, looking what has worked in the past and looking to where the puck is going. Wayne Gretzky has said you can be a terrific skater with the puck right in front of you, but you can be only a great skater if you know where to skate to where the puck is going. And that's what this conversation is about. That's the message to angel investors and early stage investors. And I say angels and early stage because I want to differentiate. There are pre seed, seed, and Series A investments that are right there on the tree, ripe for picking. Let me focus in a little bit about what you said about the business model. So, the business model really, in the past has been one drug, one disease, possibly two diseases from that drug after it's been commercialized for many years. One medical product like an artificial hip, one use, incremental value. You value that by the number of products that are sold, the size of that market, the ability to create a sales force, and other metrics, on various aspects of healthcare. If you're talking about services, it's a little bit different. But now we are talking about the intersection of core competencies. We are talking about the intersection of companies that are changing our life in a $14 trillion healthcare market. These companies have tremendous businesses with tremendous cash flow, and they are moving aggressively over the past several years into the healthcare space. What does this mean? It means that the business model about an artificial hip is not the business model of these four players. These four players are about platform technologies, multiple use cases across multiple industries. And yes, a lot of what they are focused in on is gathering data to make decisions, which I completely agree with, ultimately benefit the patients because of outcome changes. And we're partially, beginning down that road. We had an amazing company on last week, Flatiron. Flatiron focuses in on oncology and data collection. They have 800 clinical trial sites. They gather data about those clinical trials. They understand that using AI and machine learning in particular is an incredible ability to look at the way that we're treating patients, come up with different formulations of how we mix drugs, come up with different treatment algorithms based upon how AI and machine learning are telling us how we're doing as healthcare providers. These four companies are looking at several major trends. Those trends have different business models associated with them, and one of them is the data collection. You will hear next week from an incredible unicorn called Komodo Healthcare. They are working with the White House on the Cancer Moonshot Project. They are looking at treatment algorithms across the board in multiple diseases. They are working with early stage companies as well as later stage biopharma, medtech, biotech companies. What are they trying to do? They're trying to gather data from wearable sensors. They're trying to gather data from apps, from handheld devices. Data is the new eyeball. Being able to sell that data, to aggregate that data, and then, as you said, ultimately use it to change outcomes is the long term plan. The value proposition is in emerging companies, which Google has identified in over 250 early stage healthcare companies, specifically aimed at leveraging the Google Venture core competencies of digital health. Over 55% of the Google team is now healthcare. And this is just the beginning. It's $100 billion that has been put into play over the past several years looking at the digitalization of healthcare. So I want to stop there for a second because that's a lot to unpack. And I want to get your thoughts about maybe first, we are going to the Angel Capital Association Summit. We want to be able to deliver a message which is enthusiastic and authentic. What are some of those messages that we want to deliver as, let's say, the harbingers of things to come that offer up opportunities that are risk adjusted for early stage investors in the summit?
Boy, if you have an answer to that, Martin, I'm going to be very interested to know what it is.
I have a few ideas.
Yeah,
Part of what is amazing is the dynamic quality of it.
Yeah, And changing ideas and changing ideas. It's, angels know how to invest in medical devices and biotech and diagnostics. We know how to pick winners. We have barriers to entry, so we can create fiefdoms. We can create monopolies, little monopolies that cover certain products and services and areas. We know what the regulatory and reimbursement pathways are. We know how to get them to market, sell them to physicians and hospitals and other buyers, and we know how to exit. We don't know that yet in digital health. That's stuff we're all trying to figure out together. And part of it is we have to shed the old ideas and figure out the new business models and figure out where the puck is going here and how we can invest in things that aren't trends, but are in fact acquisition candidates or exit candidates that we're going to make money on and drive the industry forward with. And so I think that's kind of the challenge that we're stepping into at ACA and trying to help and with everyone there as well. The cool thing is it's not a couple people coming in and teaching angels what to do. Angels are pretty smart, sophisticated folks all by themselves. And so you're talking to an audience of experts, professionals, tons of people they have the answers to these questions, right? And so it's really just getting everybody into the conversation, I think, is what we need to do.
Oh no, I have so much respect for the people in ACA. Um, this webinar is about sharing information. What distinguishes BetterHealth from other webinars is this interactive approach where we combine different disciplines. We combine science and medicine and technology, investing. We combine a lot of information that comes out of the universities. This is about an interactive sharing approach. So we're really looking to pose questions, challenge norms. And I think that for me is part of the excitement about being an early stage investor. I'm not looking to make an investment that is a safe investment. I'm looking to make an investment that I feel has first impact in healthcare. I still do wear the white coat. I'm proud of that. Second, that impact has to be not just innovation for innovation's sake. It has to be for human beings. It has to, at this point in our lives, Alan, we have perhaps a different driver or set of drivers than we did when we were, 20 years old. And I think, at least for me, and speaking for myself, it's about building community. So when I talk to early stage CEOs, and bringing them into the venture studio, we look to bring together corporations like Clinical Trial Hero that is registering historically disenfranchised patients into clinical trials to allow a proper representation in these clinical trials by women, minorities, gender specific patients, age specific patients, typically who are not represented in clinical trials. Why is this important? It's important because the data, again, that we gather from current clinical trials is skewed. And the FDA over the past 8 years has recognized that this data does not give us the proper information that allows us to make proper decisions about use cases and effectiveness and safety. And they've recalled many drugs, or physicians have found out that those drugs are not effective in various cohorts. Combining a company like this with a company like MedSetGo, which we're also involved with, which allows aftercare, recognizing that when a patient leaves the hospital, they need proper follow through, and using technology, using AI, using cloud-based systems, again, recognizing that most of the patients who don't have proper aftercare are disenfranchised. They are not part of a wealthy cohort. They are traditionally part of an underserved population. How do these companies fill a gap in the healthcare system is what's important to me. And I can go on and on. And so when we look at some of these early stage companies as an investor, you may say, well, how do we know that this company, MedSetGo, Clinical Trial Hero, how do we know that these are going to be the companies that are going to win? And my answer is there's going to be a lot of winners, just like there were a lot of winners in the early stage .com era. And these are the companies that Microsoft and Google and Amazon and Apple are looking to bring in an accretive way. And each one of these companies can carve out a small little niche alongside other collaboration partners because it's about this data acquisition. And that might not be the case 10 years from now. But as angel investors, we have a time frame. We want an entry point that we're comfortable with at a proper valuation. And all of these companies have very reasonable valuations. Second, we want a clear exit point. And one of the things that's changed in the business model and the investment model is that the large corporations that I just mentioned, and now large pharma and biotech, all have very clear exit strategies. So they're looking to incorporate many of these companies in their core base, intersecting with their core competencies. They're also looking at these as a way of passing these companies on to corporate accelerators, which are, again, changing the whole business structure. These corporate accelerators are run by organizations in biopharma that have recognized that they don't want to be pill manufacturers. They want to be digital healthcare companies. So Sanofi has invested $1.2 billion in 80 companies in the past 18 months. Digital healthcare companies. Those are big numbers, and those liquidity events are what's part of the difference in evaluating the companies. Because while it's true that many of these companies in 10 years are not going to survive, in the next 5 years, which is the framework that most investors look at, they're going to be acquired. There's going to be M&A. They're going to come to the public markets. And that's the time frame that we're looking at here. And from a physician standpoint, many of those companies will move the needle and create this ecosystem. So that's kind of my answer for the angels when we meet them, hopefully in a little shorter version.
So we're going to try and break it down into a couple of segments. So one is why now, why life science, why invest here? There are other programs at the summit. They're going to talk about space investing and fusion and so many other aspects of tech and agriculture and all the other things where, hey, there are terrific opportunities. Change is happening. The robotization and automation of agriculture is phenomenal. It's really kind of interesting if you get in it. So many of these are pet healthcare. So many of these areas are exploding. But okay, let's say you've got 20 areas to invest in as an angel. Are you going to do well investing in all 20? Probably not. So you do need to diversify, but you also need to know what you're investing in. And so sector focus is kind of a big deal and definitely correlates with outcomes. There are very few things we've found statistically that can correlate to outcomes, but sector expertise is one of them. And so why now? Why life sciences? We're entering a recession and a financial clam down since 2022. The investment curve by VCs is straight down, and it's anticipated to go down through 2023, if not into 2024. So, gosh, we're heading into a terrible period financial wise where money is going to be less available to everybody. Why is it a good time to invest? So we're going to take that on, and we've got
Absolutely.
we're going to have an interesting discussion about that. Then we're going to talk about the traditional sectors, medtech, biotech, diagnostics, and how are they different, and how can you tackle those, which are a little bit intimidating to a lot of angels across the country that don't have life science, a critical mass of life science members in their groups, but very accessible if you just get some fundamentals understood. And so we're going to do that. And then digital health is going to be its own focus. And we're going to take on just the issues that you talked about. And in particular, talk about this whole idea of, it's take data, for example. When data first came out, it was owning data. Data was the big oil. The new oil was the phrase at the time. And so having data, collecting data like books or antiques seemed to be the goal. And the size of one's database gave the bragging rights to different startups. Okay, that turned out not to be important. What turns out to be important is what you can figure out in the data. And it's not, at first the data was horrible and not curated and really couldn't be associated to anything clinically. But okay, we're past that. And now we're getting into what's the data tell us and how does it make me choose which drug to give or not give a patient. And so along with that is coming the glacially slow but definite movement of budgetary alignment in healthcare from fee for service to value. And everybody's heard about it, and everybody's heard about the move to value care and how it's going to dominate the system. It's still less than 15% of the entire $6 trillion, 17, whatever it is, $1 trillion healthcare system. Long way to go. But what's going to take it there is AI and actionable data. And that's going to get us to precision medicine and all these other catchwords that we've been talking about. So the third panel will focus on new business models, new ways to look at that digital healthcare thing and figure out where to write a check out of your own checkbook, which is what angel investing is all.
Absolutely. And I agree with everything there. And I would add another layer on top of that. So, and this is another area where we have a dynamic disagreement, but a healthy disagreement. I believe that use cases and the amplification of a product, when coupled with revenue generation, de-risks the investment. And I know that historically, it's about selling the dream, and the valuation of that dream, can be determined by the marketplace dynamics over, a short period of time. My position right now is that we are in a liquidity crisis. I don't really care about the recession as an investor because that's a short-term event, usually 12, 18 months. There's deep recessions, there's shallow recessions. It doesn't really matter how you describe it. What does matter is that there is a global liquidity squeeze. This usually lasts 10 plus years. My analysis and endeavor looks at a 3.2% year-on-year return for 10 years of the S&P and a 37.8% return in digital healthcare. Those are risk-adjusted tailwinds. And the reason that there is a tremendous difference in the return on investment is liquidity. There's 10x liquidity in digital health than compared to any other sector. So one of the things that's different, not only the business model, but the financial model. There's never been so much money thrown into one sector in such a short period of time, and this is just the beginning. So you and I know that valuation is dependent upon what people will pay. It's also dependent upon how much money they have in their pocket. And right now, the big tech companies have a ton of money in their pocket. And I will tell you, the pharma companies have now put massive amounts of money into new corporate accelerators. Boehringer Ingelheim, not one of the names that rolls off the tip of your tongue in the Pfizer, Merck, Lilly category, but $32 billion, 32 billion euros in a new investment fund for early stage companies. This is pretty significant liquidity. So at Endeavor, we're thematic investors. We like to find synergies. We like to find long-term themes that are supported by liquidity. And so that's what we have here, coupled with the secret spice in this sauce, which is that science has gone hockey stick in terms of what it can contribute. And so let's just take a small look at one case study of a company that spans the traditional medtech world and the new digital world. It's a company that's focused in on a very simple wearable sensor device for patients who are in long-term care facilities. And the device had only one use case: notify healthcare workers about fall risk. So if there was instability in movement, the wearable sensor would pick it up. They were getting $35 a month per patient. Company was happy. We came on board to work with them with a different go-to-market and growth strategy as part of our advisor team. We added a cardiac sensor for heart rate, blood pressure monitor, pulse oximetry, respiratory rate monitor, sleep monitor. We sold that data to pharma and to Google. They want to know what those patients' needs are, what their compliance is with medications, what the effectiveness is of those medications, how they're sleeping, how many times they go up in the evening to go to the bathroom, if they're controlled or they're not controlled. That was a 4x increase in revenue. We then took the same information and the same wearable sensor, and we went to a large chain of hospitals in the US, and we looked at pre-diabetics. And we put the wearable sensor on to monitor their compliance with exercise, nutrition, sleep. That was another 2x revenue. We then took that wearable sensor and we looked at underserved minority women who were getting disparate care in the prenatal and natal environments, and their morbidity and the child's morbidity were 40% below the norm. And so we added a wearable sensor to that community. So overall, there was more than an 8x increase in revenue, and the valuation of the company skyrocketed in 12 months. So those are the things that cross traditional med tech with AI, multiple use cases. But we didn't stop there. We went then into workman's comp, and we said we can bring this wearable sensor into a dangerous work environment so that your worker who's close to a dangerous instrument can be notified. So all in, this was a huge increase in revenue from a stable but flat base. And you and I know that valuation in part is based upon accelerating growth and that curve. And that's part of the valuation metric that you should be looking at as an angel investor. What are the use cases? Where are the revenue streams potentially coming from, even if they're small? How many of those revenue streams can you pile onto this company to provide good services for healthcare recipients? Is it something that can cross industries, or is it limited to one industry? So this is a very different way of looking at valuations. I look at valuation as first, who is the leader of this organization? Is this person a team player, someone who's looking to collaborate, someone who's creative, someone who's looking for partnerships? Second, can they execute on multiple ideas at the same time through these collaborations? Third, are they able to use different use cases to generate revenues and harness this technology across multiple areas? And then finally, can they bring in large corporate players to be collaboration partners to expand out sales forces, distribution, and other use cases? And so for me, that all says growth and risk mitigation through revenue generation, collaboration, and multiple use cases. So that is a different business model than selling an artificial hip where you have to have a sales force, you have to have, cost of goods sold, you're trying to, maximize your margins, you're trying to maximize the number of product you're selling, you're, direct sales to physicians or to hospitals. It's a very different mindset.
Hugely different, and well argued. We can still take that on and continue that. But what the most you said a lot of important things, but one of the most important things you said was just that idea of innovation and creativity in business model, and the idea of shipping things out of the back of the building or selling services that require people. That's unlikely to be a rampable, scalable business model going forward. And the ones that are going to make money and the ones that are going to impact patients and the healthcare system are the ones that lower costs and improve outcomes, right? And so,
Absolutely.
and every way there is to do that is what you need to figure out and what entrepreneurs need to focus on. And just that idea of getting out of your mindset, I have one of these, I need to go ahead and sell one of these. That whole mindset has got to change to where do I fit in the healthcare system? Where do I impact cost? And where do I impact patient outcomes? And to optimize that in every way you can think of. And the examples you gave were really perfect examples of that.
Well, first, I am always thrilled about having conversations with you on camera or off camera. And I am looking for that sailing trip that we've been talking about. Since Alan and I are both avid sailors, he's kind of a semi-professional. I'm just a,
Yeah.
sailing instructor, but we both love being on the water. Second, I really want to thank everyone for dialing in today. We have people from everywhere. The comments are just, flying in here. Thank you, Francis. Thank you very much, Shahid. Thank you very much, Dr. Patel. There's a tremendous enthusiasm here, which again, is part of what we want to generate, which is conversation, ideas. Thank you very much, Dr. Castro, for calling in. Steve, thank you very much. Kevin, the list goes on and on. And, I really think that um, part of the mission of Better Health is to do exactly what we're doing today, which is question, where we can better the healthcare system as healthcare professionals, as scientists, as investors. And investors, particularly early stage investors, they have a critical role. And I feel proud to be, working with you and part of that because in the past, the venture community has gotten some, some not so good, let's say, titles next to them, like vulture investors. But I think the point really is that, just like AI is a double-edged sword, investing is a double-edged sword. If you are investing with an authentic reason, if you're in the sector that's really moving the community interests forward, you have great leaders who are value centric, patient centric. There's nothing but good things that can happen. And I know, that you have been involved with healthcare specifically for decades. that you work with people in firms like Wilson Sonsini, who often work on spec and work because they care about these CEOs. They care about trying to build, communities. And so these are the people that I want to reach out to. These are the people I think that are listening in today who are saying, wow, how can we get involved with Angel Capital Association? How can we get involved with this movement? And so one of the last things that I want to say, and then throw it back to you, is I know Alan and I will both encourage people to look at what the Angel Capital Association is doing. It is going through some changes. It is, I think, in part looking for direction within the healthcare sector. We do have 4 tracks within this conference, which hasn't happened for a number of years. And so I'm enthusiastic that this is just the tip of the iceberg.
Well, well said. And I think the group drifted a little bit. I think ACA drifted a little bit from life science focus. And part of that is, really traditional life science investing. It is kind of wickedly difficult, and understanding regulatory and reimbursement and all the other things that control healthcare investing that don't control other areas of investing. Just make it tougher and more intimidating, particularly for angels to put their arms around. But now that it's coming into the digital age, and you don't need to understand all the signaling pathways of a particular disease state to pick out what AI can do, for example, to choosing which of 50 patients in your ICU should be the ones that are most likely to crash. Those are, now that it's becoming more accessible, and you can rely on the scientists and engineers to do the science, and you can just do the business model part of it. I think we've got a real chance of opening that back up, taking advantage of what you said with the explosion of investing by the big 4 in this, and be part of leading the next generation forward as healthcare digitizes and we do move to value care.
Couldn't think of a better way to end a terrific hour. I really want to thank you so much, Alan, for participating. It's always a pleasure. And I really want to thank again the audience, for everyone signing in. For those people that have questions, we will certainly try to get back to you in short order. There's been a lot of questions here, but the dynamic flow is something that I didn't want to interrupt between our conversation. And I hope that everyone has enjoyed it. Please tune in next week for Komodo Health. It is a continuation of what we're talking about: data aggregation, understanding where we're taking this data to outcome changes. And we will talk about amazing companies in the future who are looking at using AI for predictive value, for ways that AI can shape diagnostics, which again is a field that we can talk about in future conversations, which traditionally has been a low growth industry and now off the charts, exploding. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Alan. I look forward to continuing these incredible conversations.
Thanks, Martin.
Stay tuned, Alan. We're just going to sign off here.